Here we are, part 2 of my video series about Ace. So if you watched part 1, you know that I talked a lot about how trauma for Ace showed up on Love Island. And in this video, the question is, what happens when the parts of yourself you can't see are suddenly on display for the whole world to judge? In part 2 of my series on Ace, I'm going to look at how his interview with Speedy reveals the push and pull between who he believes he is and how others actually experience him. And more importantly, what this tension teaches us about trauma, self-awareness, and relationships. Hi, I'm Dr. Pam, therapist and relationship counselor, and I just want to say that so many of you have joined me on this journey as I have been reacting to Love Island, and I can't thank you enough for being here with me. I will be posting 2 more videos for Love Island, and then I'm going to be shifting to Love is Blind because it gives us more raw, unfiltered moments about dating and relationships to break down together. And if you found value in the way that I unpack the dynamics on Love Island, you'll find so much to connect with in Love is Blind as well. At the heart of my videos isn't just about the show. It's exploring relationships, trauma, and so much more that we can learn about ourselves through these stories. And that doesn't stop with Love Island. So I'd love for you to come with me into the next chapter, because whether it's Love Island or Love is Blind, we are still diving deep into the same questions that matter most in relationships and about ourselves. And when Love Island comes back, you know I'll be right there with you for it. Okay, so let's just dive right in. Speedy says that he wants to talk about who is Ace and asks him why he has his name tatted on his back.
Ace has always been a lifelong nickname.
Oh, it's a nickname? Okay.
It's a nickname, and my mom was going to name me that at birth, but you know, things happen, and for me, it holds sentimental value. I go by Ace, and I make sure that's important for people to know is Ace.
Ace is what your name is.
Yeah.
I think it is always interesting that Ace only shares so much, and of course that is his right. Everyone deserves privacy and the ability to choose what they share and what they hold back. At the same time, if I were the interviewer, I would have been curious to ask Ace about the sentimental value behind the nickname Ace. I mean, after all, he has it tattooed on his body, which naturally draws attention. What stands out here for me is the mixed message. On one hand, the tattoo suggests his name holds deep meaning for him, something he wants permanently visible. But on the other hand, when asked, he stays vague and avoids opening up about it. I mean, from my experience when I talk with people, tattoos are deeply meaningful, and I have found that people want to share the meaning behind their tattoo. This kind of mixed signals can often show up for people with unresolved trauma, as I talked about in part 1. On one hand, a person may want to express importance, connection, or identity through something outward, like a tattoo. And on the other hand, they may still feel the need to protect themselves by holding back the emotional story behind it. It's not just about privacy. It can reflect an internal sort of push-pull between wanting to be seen and fearing vulnerability. So next, Ace talks about the community that he grew before Love Island.
People would think I'm just some sort of dance teacher, which is surface level, but for me, you know, I just use my gifts to spread love and spread positivity. And that's what I built my following off of, is just, you know, spreading peace, because that's what I stand for.
I love that Ace says that he stands for love and peace, and given all that he has shared, that he didn't have it easy growing up, it's impressive that he chose to align himself with values so different from the pain that he experienced. He could have gone in a very different direction, but instead he seems to be reaching towards something better. That's the thing about trauma. Everyone comes out of it differently. Some people, often without realizing it, perpetuate the pain that they endured onto others. Some throw themselves into healing and growth and breaking cycles, and many find themselves somewhere in between, trying to live out their ideals while still wrestling with the parts of their trauma that remain unresolved. And that's what I see in Ace, which I'll talk about throughout this whole video. And at the end of this video, I'm going to tie together the parts of Ace that he sees and the part that we see and why that is happening. So next, Speedy asked Ace if his intentions coming into the villa were different because he already had a following.
My intentions was to get to know someone through and through for them. I didn't want to ask nobody about no social media aspect of it. And when I felt like going into this villa and people were asking me, yo, what is your following? What's your following this? And what do you think is gonna be outside of this? I don't feel people are there for genuine intentions. When I'm hearing people in those conversations, it doesn't seem genuine to me, especially when, again, I have those things, so that's not my main focus in this villa.
I would have asked Ace why he felt that he had to go on Love Island to find love. He says that people were not genuine, and that certainly can be true. I just want to show you something that Jeremiah said to Ace at the reunion. Andy asked Ace if he thought that Jeremiah was there for the wrong reasons and if he was focused too much on what would happen after they left the villa.
When I hear comments about getting the money, when I hear comments about followers outside the villa, I don't feel this is a genuine connection. It's been conversations of, when the guys are sitting around talking about, what was our following before this and what was your following and what do you think it's gonna be?
So first, Ace said that he didn't think that Huda and Jeremiah had a genuine connection, and I don't think anyone can draw conclusions about who has a genuine connection or not. I mean, we all know that their relationship was toxic, but Ace really dug his heels in, believing that they did not have a genuine connection. I question if this was a trigger for Ace, meaning, did he grow up with people in his life who moved too quickly in a relationship and it ultimately hurt him? It's just a thought. Also, he said that people were talking about their following, and that may be true, but that doesn't mean that's why they are there. I mean, it may be or it may not be. I'm going to say more, but I want to show you how Jeremiah responded to Ace.
One, I never mentioned the money. I remember I made a joke where like, oh, when we get out of here or when we win. I didn't go in there, let me go stress for 6 weeks to get 50 racks. That's not, respectfully, I'm not going through that 50 racks, you feel me? So it's like, it was never about the money. And to two, your point, it was never about, oh, I can't wait to get in here and see what I got. So I'm not gonna go in here like rolling the dice, try to get followers, that's dumb.
So Jeremiah addressed those claims rather well. Here's the thing, Ace has very strong opinions. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with that, it's important to recognize that strong opinions can sometimes close you off from curiosity about others. When you're certain you already know something about someone, you may stop listening for different perspectives. From a trauma perspective, as I have mentioned in part 1, unprocessed trauma can lock a person into rigid beliefs. Those beliefs aren't always the truth in itself. They can be shaped by triggers and projections. In other words, what feels like a fact may actually be a defense against something painful underneath. One common impact of trauma is black and white thinking. And let me say more about this because it is so important. Seeing things as good or bad, right or wrong, with little space in between, that kind of thinking can be difficult for the people on the receiving end of it, but it's also exhausting for the person holding it. Life becomes a constant cycle of judgment and reactivity without much room for openness or understanding. I always say that living in the gray zone is liberating. Gray thinking expands your possibilities. So, for example, instead of concluding that someone is rejecting you, which is so painful and it's so absolute, you might consider alternatives if you live in the gray zone. Maybe they're busy, maybe they're tired, or maybe they're facing their own struggles. Gray doesn't erase pain, but it makes space for compassion for yourself and for others. When you are able to shift from black and white to gray, it often becomes so healing. It doesn't mean giving up on your values or losing conviction. It means holding them with enough openness to stay curious about others' perspectives and to allow for more than one truth to exist at one time. That's where deeper connection becomes possible. So as the interview continues, Speedy asks Ace about voting Jeremiah off the island. And this is what he says.
But I was man enough to admit to Jeremiah, like, look, bro, I apologize because, again, it's not personal. And I'm trying to get him to understand it's not personal. And we were able to have that conversation of us clearing things up regarding how he got sent home and the differences that we had throughout the season. And, you know, we understood where we were both coming from.
It's not a genuine apology when someone says, I'm sorry, but it's not personal. That kind of statement dismisses the impact of hurtful actions. I wish Speedy had addressed the more serious issues when Ace called Jeremiah a liar, a scammer, and a love bomber. Those are deeply personal and hurtful accusations, and I haven't heard Ace acknowledge any of that at all. Maybe he did privately, but here's the thing. He made those statements publicly. And when you put something harmful into the public space, it warrants a public acknowledgement and a show of remorse for the narrative that you created about someone. From a trauma lens, accountability and shame often go hand in hand. It's why someone doesn't take accountability, because shame makes it hard to admit fault. So people sometimes offer partial or surface level apologies, like saying it wasn't personal, because that feels safer. But true accountability means taking ownership of the deeper hurt that you caused for someone. For Ace, apologizing for sending Jeremiah home is the easier step. Facing and repairing the damage caused by the public inaccurate narrative is so much harder, but far more important. So next, Ace addresses his encounters with Amaya. He begins by saying that he loves Amaya and that she wears her emotions on her sleeve. He explains that she had shared with him, when they were talking, some of the traumatic relational experiences that she went through in the past, and that he wanted to support her. And then he adds this.
I just wanted to make things clear to her, because we're about to sleep in a bed together. I want to make sure ground rules are set, so that way you don't cross a boundary and I don't cross your boundary. And you know, what they didn't get to see is the conversation that we talked about regarding those traumatic experiences. Every time she's cried through our conversations, they copied and pasted, you know, the clip of her crying to me telling her about my boundaries. It wasn't about the conversation that we did have. And it sucks that people didn't get to see that.
Who knows, that may very well be true, that in editing they copied and pasted Amaya crying. However, no one copied and pasted this.
He's like, oh, I'm keep it real with you, like, you know, I'm still exploring other connections, and like, obviously, like, I understand that, that's why we're here, but like, that's not the first thing I want to hear after you pick me.
Girl. I would be curious how Ace would respond if he was shown that clip of Amaya being hurt and expressing her hurt. I imagine that he would respond with that he needed to create boundaries, and yes, that is very important. However, what stands out to me is that when he chose her, he was very romantic in describing what it would be like sharing a bed with her. Let me just quick show you this. I did talk about this in part 1, but I want to show you in case you haven't been here before.
I'm really excited to share a bed with this person and have conversations late night about stupid shit.
So that's the confusion for many of us around Ace's words when he chose Amaya, and then his closed offness when he created those boundaries. So next, Ace addresses the accusation that he was bullying Amaya.
Coming out the villa and watching the show for the very first time, I could see how that can get misconstrued of me being bullying. But if you watch it for actually what it is, I never once raised my voice with Amaya. I was very clear and concise on how I was feeling. And me just stating my boundary, I don't see how that can be taken as me bullying.
The idea that not raising your voice means you couldn't have bullied Amaya isn't accurate. Not raising your voice can actually signal that you are in complete control. And if you are harsh while calm, that calmness itself can feel intimidating. Do I think Ace bullied Amaya? Here's what I would say. Ace was trying to stand his ground, but it came across as harsh and controlling. Ace is only acknowledging one part of who he is, and that's what I will talk about throughout the rest of this video. He may very well have been sensitive to Amaya in certain conversations about past relationships, but he struggles to acknowledge his harsher side. Ace believes that he is simply being direct or saying it like it is, as he has described himself many times. What he doesn't recognize is that his delivery comes across as harsh And when he says it like it is, it feels like his truth, but it may not reflect someone else's experience of the situation. This is important because what we call our truth is always filtered through our lens, shaped by our history, our wounds, and our perspective. It doesn't necessarily make it the truth. Without that awareness, people can unintentionally cause harm while believing they're just being honest. What I see with Ace is that he would benefit from acknowledging all sides of himself, both the sensitive and the harsh. When you deny the harsh part of yourself, you risk always feeling misunderstood because others are responding to the side of you that you don't see or won't acknowledge. That is a painful cycle. He will feel hurt for feeling misunderstood, while others will feel hurt by his harshness. If he were to acknowledge that he has moments of harshness, it isn't about shaming himself. It's about self-awareness. Because once you recognize it, you can work to manage it, soften it, and communicate more effectively. Without that step, the pattern repeats. Ace continues to feel unseen, and others continue to feel wounded. And this is what Ace said about the babe moment.
And I've been very clear with Amaya, and it sucks that people didn't get to see a friendship that we built, because after maybe about 6-7 days after the whole babe incident, we were cool. We didn't both apologized to each other and both said, look, I'm sorry for the way I came off because this wasn't my intent.
So what he is sharing is that they were good a week after the babe moment. But during the mailbox challenge, which was weeks after he claims that they moved past the babe moment, his confrontation in the mailbox challenge with her crossed a line. It was hurtful, and I can't help but wonder, why couldn't he let the whole babe comment go, especially when he says, now that they got past that, they were friends and apologized to each other. Why did he feel the need to challenge her publicly after becoming friends? Amaya was trying to stand her ground in the mailbox challenge, and Ace jumped in with what looked like a need to set her straight. This comes back to how Ace sees himself. He believes his truth. He prides himself on being direct, but he doesn't always consider the impact of his words on others. From a trauma perspective, this can happen when you've experienced pain. You may feel that you're doing much better than the people who hurt you, and that may be true, but it doesn't erase the reality that your actions can still wound others. That's the self-awareness Ace would benefit from, because he says he is about love and peace, and I'm not questioning that intention, but until he's able to acknowledge both sides of who he is, he will continue to struggle with how others see him, and he will continue to feel misunderstood. True peace is acknowledging both sides of himself, but with insight, understanding, and compassion. Okay, let's move on to Ace's perspective about Nick and Olandria.
My last conversation with Nick before I left was, he finds her attractive, she finds him attractive, but they haven't found a romantic spark. And that was my conversation with him throughout this entire experience. He was saying that it was nothing more than a physical attraction. It was just not at that romantic spark level.
Okay, so we all knew this. Both Nick and Olandria admitted that to each other, but at the same time, both of them were in other relationships. I actually addressed all of this in my Nick Olandria video. But next, Speedy asks Ace what his reaction is to Nick and Olandria since leaving the villa. Ace responds by saying he's very happy for Olandria, especially given all that she went through in the villa, and that he's very close to her. But Speedy points out something interesting. Ace never actually said he was happy for Nick.
Yeah, I'm happy for Nick too. I'm happy for both of them. It's just I'm really happy for Olandria because, again, we developed a really close bond in there as well.
Okay, so he says he is happy for both of them. So why does he say this?
Do you feel like Olandria and Nick's relationship is real? Is this you thinking, or is this your answer? I'm going to assume that that's your answer.
So why do that? By smirking and staying silent, Ace ended up hurting the very person he claimed to be happy for, Olandria, especially given all that she endured in the villa. This is one of those moments where Ace seems to think he's saying it like it is, but this time without words, but silence can be just as loud and as cutting as speech. In this case, his silence came across as dismissive and harsh. The thing is, he didn't need to respond that way to be genuine. A more respectful response could have been something like, "I'm not sure what you mean by real, but when I see them, they seem very happy together, and I hope the best for them." That would have allowed him to stay authentic, because I don't know what he thinks about Nick and Olandria, but he could have stayed authentic without undermining Olandria and Nick. In his interview with Speedy, he said he didn't see it happening for Nick and Olandria, but remember this?
And Nick is single.
I don't know what's gonna happen.
You know what I see happening?
What do you see?
I see, and it's just a thought. I know they kind of had like a thing, so maybe they could rekindle.
That's not like impossible.
Don't count it out.
So why the flip? This is what I think. Speedy asked Ace who he considers to be his friends. He names Olandria, Chelley, Taylor, and Brian. And Speedy asks why he left out Nick.
When it comes to the serious shit regarding my character, that's the things I take serious.
And you feel like he didn't stand up for you and or silence narratives when he had the opportunity.
And I told him that. I told him, I said, yo, I feel like the answer that you gave was just mad PR, and I didn't respect it. And he was like, well, I'm pretty much over it.
Well, I don't know the full backstory between Ace and Nick. Maybe you do, but clearly Ace felt that Nick should have said something. He didn't. Here's the thing. In my last video, I mentioned that Ace, by his own words, was let down a lot when he was young, and he doesn't trust easily. Because of that, he likely has very high standards for what he expects from people in order to not feel let down. And when he feels that trust has been broken, there's often little, if any, room for repair. So when he says that he and Nick are cool, what he really is saying is that they can be in the same room together, but he will never see him the same way, and he will likely never trust him again. But here's the striking part. Ace is upset because Nick didn't step up to support him in the way he wanted, and yet he just did something very similar to his close friend, Olandria. By smirking and staying silent when asked if her relationship with Nick was real, he implied doubt, and in doing so failed to support her. The very thing he feels wounded by is what he ended up passing along to someone he cares about. And he did the same thing to Jeremiah. He put a hurtful narrative in public by saying that Jeremiah was a liar, scamming, and a love bomber. This is a classic example of how unhealed trauma and pain can play out. We become so focused on how others fail us, we don't see when we are unintentionally repeating the same dynamic with them. So next, Speedy asked Ace if Chelley is his girlfriend.
Not yet. Well, people was going back and forth of Ace is scared of commitment. He's too young. First off, number one, I feel like the whole age conversation is silly to me, because I feel like I've been through a lot of shit that not the average child is gonna go through. And it causes you to mature a little bit faster in this life. And respectfully, it's not other people's relationships, so they can mind their own damn business.
Big disconnect here is that Ace wants others to stay out of his relationship with Chelley and mind their own business, but then he turned around and said something very hurtful by saying Olandria's relationship with Nick isn't real. He's asking for respect in his own life while not giving that same respect to hers. Something important to notice here is that Ace describes himself as mature, but growing up fast because of trauma doesn't necessarily create maturity. it can create responsibility. You learn survival skills, how to get things done, how to manage on your own. But the emotional side, self-awareness, empathy, the ability to handle conflict without harshness, doesn't always get the chance to fully develop. That's why responsibility and emotional maturity are so often mistaken for one another. From what we see with Ace, this is where the disconnect lies. He believes that he is mature, but unhealed trauma shows up in emotional immaturity, especially in how he struggles to see and take responsibility for the impact that he has on others.
I face, anxiety, especially being out inside the villa, and people are like, oh, why is his voice a little shaky? Because honestly, bro, it's hard, like dealing with it. Like I felt some sort of depression, like coming out, because I'm such a positive person. I'm such a happy, loving person that I'm trying to spread that to everybody else, and to see that I was portrayed as something, as the opposite of who I am as a person, is tough to deal with.
I'm not surprised that Ace struggled with depression after leaving the villa. I didn't know him before Love Island, but my sense is that he found joy in teaching dance and sharing that part of himself with others. That setting likely allowed him to show his talent, energy, and passion, aspects that feel positive and affirming to him. But Love Island was different. Once he was on the show, the audience didn't just see his strengths, they also saw sides of him that he doesn't see in himself. And that's what people began to respond to. It's a harsh mirror to face, because suddenly the world reflects back pieces of you that you don't recognize or believe are there. In many ways, that can feel like years of therapy being forced on you all at once, but without the context, guidance, or compassion that therapy can provide. He didn't get to experience the slow building of self-awareness, no gradual process of understanding or self-compassion. Instead, he's confronted with raw feedback and public scrutiny. The added insight here is that depression in this context makes perfect sense. When unresolved trauma collides with public exposure, it can trigger shame, confusion, and a deep sense of being misunderstood. I hope Ace is actively working on healing his trauma, because when people start to connect the dots between their past experiences and the ways those experiences shape their daily choices and interactions and their relationships, the insight can be life-changing. Healing doesn't erase the trauma, but it does give people the freedom to embody their intentions more fully. And for Ace, that would mean living love and peace, not only as a name, but as a consistent reality in his relationships and his life. Well, that's a wrap on this episode. Make sure to come back when I break down the interview with Nick and Olandria on Modern Love. See you next time.